Morning, colleagues. My name is Dr. Oluwarotimi from the University of the Witwatersrand. Today's topic is exploring the potential of South African team video games as tools to bridge the cultural and linguistic divides for South African learners. So my slides will be discussing about the possibilities and how we intend to maximize the possibilities of implementing this. One of the prides of South Africa is the diversity and the various South African languages which are available. South Africa has 11 languages, and these languages are available for everyone to learn and utilize. But the beauty is that we have a lot of video game development in South Africa. Video games are developed regularly, and universities are focused on this creative development. Africa as a continent accounts for 600 million video game players, which I am one of them, but globally there are 2.3 billion video game players. But the uniqueness is that how can we use video games as a tool for effective language and visual language and as well as cultural awareness? How can we use it to express our culture? How can we use it as a tool for visual language production? And how can we use it to promote multilingualism? And not just that, how can we use it as a tool to keep people engaged in learning or exploration? Or how can we provide narratives that keep people engaged within the video games? So this presentation is going to be exploring how all these possibilities can take place and especially explore cultural exchanges that can be provided through this medium. The concept of African team video games is not a new concept. Zindela 2019, Bayek 2018 have all talked about the importance of African team video games, which speak to the cultural or the localized or the familiar aspects of video games. Others have also spoken about how representation is seen in video games, especially Zindela 2019, as explained and expressed the need for representation to be acknowledged and how video games need to show that representation or what roles are given to characters or elements within video games, as these elements speak to a lot of issues and how people perceive or receive these video games. There has been a lot of video games that have been developed on Western perspectives and lesser on African perspectives. And this speaks to where University of the Witwatersrand is on, whereby we are pushing indigenous knowledge and African perspectives through video games for our students, thereby ensuring that our students are able to understand that they are able to use their indigenous customs, cultures, or perspectives to develop the video games. There is a major challenge and growth on popularity of video games, especially representation of Black people. And we believe that through video games, through African narratives in video games, we can change the lens of how we project and how we present video games. And again, with 600 million game players, there is a need for our video games to speak to the various teams, whether it's a Cape Town team, whether it's an Eastern Cape team, whether it's a KZN team. But we want to project and see how our African perspectives, especially the South African perspectives and cultures, are expressed through the video games to keep the game players engaged and excited on the video games. As we all know, the African culture is rich with diversity and rich historical stories and cultural aspects or traditions. In fact, with 11 different languages, it brings in 11 different cultures which are all unique and indigenous to a particular group of people. Video games have consistently used Western approaches, Western languages, Western cultures, Western perspectives. But there is a disadvantage to this. It leads to the erosion of indigenous languages and indigenous cultural identities. It promotes low utilization of linguistic diversities and lack of utilization of cultural heritages. It also reduces the cultural assimilation and promotes dependency on Western perspectives or Western approaches, thereby diminishing and reducing the ability for us to express ourselves in our local indigenous languages. These four things are four critical aspects that need to be protected and resolved to ensure that we do not lose our cultural identity, we do not lose our indigenous languages, we do not lose our heritage, we reduce the assimilation and dependency on Western perspectives, and also to create a venue or a medium through which our local culture and the various South African local cultures, languages can be promoted and preserved for future generations, and to ensure that the language is well developed and utilized across various spectrums, and allow people to be able to use technology as a means to express their local languages and their heritage. And this speaks to the cultural aspect and speaks to the developmental aspects. Now, for this to be achieved, there is a need for African governments to prioritize language and cultural policies to promote African-oriented video games. The University of the Witwatersrand has implemented a language policy which has been very beneficial to all the students at WITS, and also awareness of the utilization of sign languages. One of the things, the benefits of this is that it fosters cultural identity, ownership, and promotes indigenous languages among students. The utilization of this within the university system or language policy also helps to drive the agenda that language and cultural perspectives need to be utilized within a video game or within video games to speak to the familiar or the local group of people who will be playing these video games. While the utilization of English is very good, but literature has shown that in certain environments, teaching utilizing the local indigenous language has provided a far better result in the performance of the students. And this also speaks to the utilization of video games, that prioritizing local language and prioritizing visual cues and within video games speaks to the need that this can be a tool for transformative learning and meeting students at their own individual needs. This also speaks to why African team video games are important, because it helps to imbibe with the students or the game players the need and how cultural aspects are expressed within the video games. A good example is a video game that shows a group of people sitting around a tree and discussing issues. It might be a different aspect in the video game, but it shows that there is a culture somewhere whereby issues are discussed in an Ubuntu manner, which brings together a family setting or a unionism, as people saying in the video game, they are working as one group. While video games are very important and how they are utilized, there is a need to talk about creative learning. Creative learning is an exciting adventure that involves challenges, exploration, and risk. To keep students engaged in video games, there has to be a creative approach to it. There has to be a learning approach. There has to be something which the game players are learning. When we talk about exploration within the video games, there has to be stages within the video games whereby people go from one stage to another stage and they explore the different landscapes, the different environments, the different cultures in the various spaces of the video game. But to keep players engaged, there has to be a challenge. The challenge is what keeps them motivated to play the next level of the game. There has to be a risk in the game. If they do not perform well at a particular level in a video game, they have to go back and repeat that level to advance to the next level. There are things that will be given to them, things like access, things like tools or devices or equipments to use within the video games to promote themselves to the next level. And this is where creative learning comes in. As they navigate through the game, it keeps them engaged and reduces boredom within the game, and thereby keeping all the learners engaged and keeping a sense of enjoyment within the game. Learning is always enjoyable and needs fun, and thereby within that space of providing fun or enjoyment within the game, a transformative learning experience is happening there for the learners, whereby they are learning new things and they are working on new agendas within the video game. It also helps them in their behavior and a sense of accomplishment in the video game through creative learning, whereby they are learning creative things and they are completing the task, which is helping them move on to a next phase. So, for video games to keep learners engaged, three key components are exploration, challenge, and the risk. The two most important ones are the exploration, showing them the landscape, and the challenges and the obstacles that we create for them within the video game to keep them engaged in the journey of the game. Creative learning can be seen from different aspects. One is the provision of traditional skills and for happiness, provision of promoting well-being and other positive states such as happiness, flourishing, strengths, and capabilities. Another benefit of this is that instructional approaches can be provided, which enhances the teacher engagement, the student preparedness, the student's behavioral management, the increased engagement, and the improved academic performances. They have always said it in various articles that when something is gamified, it brings a sense of fun, it brings a sense of engagement, a sense of something to drive for. And this also speaks to the role of motivation. That when we bring in a creative thing into a video game, it keeps the person engaged, it promotes cognitive knowledge, and it brings up enthusiasm in learning, and also creates a more positive learning environment for the learner. The objective of this strategy is to boost students' interest and promote indigenous learning in an enjoyable, engaging, and interactive experience. The video games have the ability to keep students engaged, especially when there are obstacles or challenges or goals to achieve within the video game. The stages of the video game also helps them to keep engaged and brings in an interactive experience for the learners to engage with people in the video games and also participate with them and get different levels of engagement within the video game. One of the benefits of this is that it makes the game enjoyable and keeps the game engaging, thereby ensuring that the learners are able to work in the game and also learn new things. This is what particularly done by something called the NPC, which is the non-player character within the video game. This will serve as a companion and a learning partner for the game players within the game, thereby creating an effective learning environment that aims to promote the education and training objectives for the game player. So the main ingredients for this to exist, we need to talk about the role of digital tools. How do these digital tools play a role in providing this conducive learning environment and in a playful manner or in a playful learning environment? We're going to talk about the various tools. These tools include the video games. Other tools include large language models, which also include the low resource languages. We also have something called the NPCs, which are the non-playing characters, which will be the conduits or the tools or the medium by which the information will be delivered. The role of this is to ensure that the information gets delivered properly to the group of individuals that we want them to meet. This will also speak to the NPCs who will play as a companion within the learning journey or within the video game experience to keep the player engaged and also serve as a tool to provide the information that is critical, either culturally, linguistically, to the video game player. So, how do we create these video games and what are they? Video games are artistic tools for expression belief and are tools for keeping children and adults engaged and entertained. They are also a medium of learning. But how do we create these video games? We utilize two softwares to make these video games. The first one is the Unity software, and of recent, we now have the Unreal software. Both of them are tools which we use to write codes or programs to create the video games. These two things have their pros and their cons, and they have their areas of where they are stronger at, but we use both of them. We integrate Unity into the learning experience of students at second year, where they begin to use the basic programming languages to enhance their development of the video games. By the time they get to their third year, they are now becoming experts, and we give them other aspects of video games, which is things like bringing in challenges, obstacles, motivations into the video game. By the time they get to their fourth year, they have become experts and now creating video games that have impact. So the video games are the main tool which we use, and we utilize it in expressing the various aspects of culture or narratives. Literature has shown us, and studies have shown us, such as Randle 2024, Bayek 2020, and Bayek et al. 2018, that video games have the ability to boost mental thinking, creativity, health care awareness, mental health awareness and improvement, and also serve as a medium or a tool to provide learning. Video games can be designed in such a way whereby they show that how diseases can be controlled and managed. A good example is a TB video game, which shows how video game is contacted, how TB is contacted, and how the game player can go through several challenges to treat him or herself from to get better and use medication. And he or she will get the medication through doing certain obstacles. And as the person does the obstacles, the person is aware of the various approaches and the various things they should not do and things they should do to ensure that they don't get TB, and also how TB can be medicated. Another issue is mental health. There are a lot of issues around mental health, but video games can serve as an audience to people to educate them on mental health issues, things like schizophrenia, how it is, and it can be managed, and the various stages. The beauty of this is that video games have the ability to provide this knowledge in indigenous languages, thereby ensuring that the reach of it is globally. And for South Africa, video games can also provide this in the 11 indigenous South African languages, thereby ensuring maximum awareness of this. Riddles and puzzles are also a way in which video games play a role, like providing video games in the video games, giving students riddles for them to solve to move to the next level. This also helps their mental thinking and improving their mathematical skills and understanding. The second tool is the NPCs, also known as non-player characters. NPCs are characters utilized in video games to serve as a support. The NPCs are the medium in which we are going to be communicating with the game players. All the knowledge will be put into the NPCs, who will then be communicating via text or via speech, or even as a companion as they move in the video game, would always be giving the advice. If the video game is such a way that there's a setting whereby there has to be in the video game a family meeting or a group of individuals like mine need to sit down together, the NPC will serve as a tool to speak to the game player to tell him we need to go for this meeting, we need to go sit down under the tree to listen to a folk tale in the indigenous language, which would definitely be a language that the game player will be able to speak with. So if it's in the rural KZN, they would all go to the KZN region, they'll sit down beside a tree, and an elder will speak to all of them about a story or about an issue in the video game that is indigenous to the people. It will speak to them in their own indigenous language, thereby ensuring that they are engaged, and also provide solutions and advice in the indigenous language. Of course, the NPC will be dressed in the local culture of the game player, thereby giving the person a sense of awareness of this particular costume belongs to this particular group of people, and how this particular group of people work as a group. The role of the NPC also supports the storyline and provides a means to ensure that the game player knows what are the obstacles and how best to meet or mitigate the various obstacles within the game. But for the NPC to work properly, we have to support it with something called large language models. These language models, we would specifically be using low resource languages, which are the current African languages provided. And the reason they are called low resource languages is because they have not been developed extensively, unlike languages like English, French, and German. So we intend to use these low resource languages, which are mostly the African languages or South African languages, through the NPC to provide this communication and provide this knowledge. We also want a situation whereby the player can ask the NPC questions, and through the large language model, the NPC can do some investigation to provide the data or the information to the game player in real time. So the NPC would not only be a companion, it would also be an educator, it will be a discusser, someone that discusses with you in the indigenous language. And as the process keeps going, we intend to keep on training the NPC and training the large language model to be able to deliver the information to the NPC on various issues within the video game. Furthermore, large language models can be explained to be AI tools, programs, or databases that can recognize speech and text, or text and speech. The large language models are developed and trained on huge sets of data, and they utilize machine learning techniques, most relevant neural network techniques, but they are working based on a transformer model. The transformer model is a unique model which most large language models are based on, and it helps to synthesize and manage the data properly. With respect to our research, and especially with respect to the language policy which is being implemented at the University of the Witwatersrand, we intend to use South African languages, which are regarded as low resource languages because they have less content on the internet. So low resource languages are languages that have limited presence or significantly less content on the internet. The high resource languages are the languages that have high content on the internet. Examples of high resource languages are English, French, German, and maybe Spanish. The low resource languages, unfortunately, are mostly the African languages as they are still being developed. Their contents are still being developed on the internet. Include the isiZulu, the Tonga, Yoruba languages, which is for Southwest Nigeria, and other African languages are still low resource languages. One of the benefits we expect to achieve from this work is that we should be able to improve the low resource languages and help in building them and building more content of them on them through these video games, which will be played by several South Africans with respect to the various languages. As they play it and they communicate, we will keep on learning new words. The NPC will be getting new words, and we'll keep on bringing them to the database, and we will keep on translating them gradually until we get to the point whereby the low resource languages are well built and robust in structure. But we cannot discuss all these tools without discussing two important characters or attributes of video games that we intend to promote. One is culture, one is language. Language is the backbone of culture, playing a vital role in preserving and transmitting cultural identities, values, traditions, and especially narratives within a community. When language is lost, culture is lost. And that is very true. Without language, there is no culture because now it's losing. But video games can serve as a tool for language preservation and as also cultural survival. As cultures keep changing, there is a record from video games that show what has been done in the past, how it was in the past, and how it is moving in the future. Video games can also serve as a tool to provide historical narratives and folk tales or folklore or oral traditions to groups of people within the video games. It also serves as a tool to promote a sense of belonging and a shared identity. It helps gamers to understand a shared identity. So if a gamer is based in the United States or in Europe or in a different continent, the video games can give them a sense of belonging, especially when in the video games the NPCs are speaking in their indigenous language or utilizing cultural perspectives which speaks to that gamer's culture. It brings a sense of belonging, and this has been expressed by various researchers like Wang 2021, Otter 2018, and Matthews and Lopez 2019. Preservation of culture is a critical task and does not only involve the gamers, but includes individuals, communities, families, and nations. As the embodiment of a culture, of a people's culture, identity, spirit, language is a precious asset that needs to be protected. And this protection can be done through the use of video games as a medium to preserve, entertain, keep engaged, and also as a medium to provide learning to millions of youths and adults all over the world. We hear of issues in South Africa where some languages become extinct or things like that. But video games can serve as a tool to preserve these languages or preserve these cultures. It also serves as a lesson, as a place where people can see how culture was engaged. If there was a family meeting, if there's a group meeting, the video games can portray a narrative of that meeting taking place, whereby people can sit down together, have the meeting, show different cultural perspectives to ensure that everyone is aware of the culture. To ensure their survival, it is essential to capture authentic oral forms of our languages, harnessing the wisdom, knowledge, and energy of communities. By doing so, we will be linking generations, enabling cultural regeneration, and safeguarding the heritage for future generations. How do we provide a means whereby in the next 100 years, there is a way to see what was the culture or what were the cultural, sociocultural dynamics or expressed in the country at that time? Video games can serve as that tool or that conduit to provide this information. And it will do it not just in English, but in the indigenous languages to show that there were people or group of people using it for their own cultural perspectives or cultural ideas. The negatives of loss of language are extreme, are real, and some of them could include making people vulnerable because they do not have the languages, they don't have the repository. And this speaks to why we are working with Sadila on this, because Sadila has the repository of various languages, and we want to see how we can use technology to promote languages from extinction. And also, it helps us to preserve traditional knowledge, social values, traditional customs, collective memory, and all this can be expressed through video games and also protected through the digital humanities media of video games. Literature has also shown that this is very important, like Link et al. 2021, Chu et al. 2019 have indicated that language extinction is a critical issue, and there must be ways in which we preserve this. And this speaks to video games again, saying video games are not just for entertainment alone, but they serve as a repository for these languages and how they were used and how people can engage with them, which means that in the future, it would become a classroom of the future, whereby indigenous knowledge will be taught to students, even though they have never attended that class, but they have the ability to learn on how the languages and how customs or visual cues have played a role in the community. This also speaks to the role of visual language. How do we teach, or how do we teach young South Africans visual language? We already know that we have 600 million video game players in Africa. And we believe that one of the ways to teach them visual language is to incorporate this into the video games, whereby when they play the video games, they hear what things or see signs like short left, short right in the video games. it begins to help them understand that when they see it in real life scenarios and the person does the sign, they know what it means. It also helps to understand that sign languages can now be expressed and taught through the video games so that most people are aware of the various signs and how they are being utilized and when they are being there. So for me, I see video games as a support system to the education, and not just a support system, an engaging and exciting way and a creative way of providing learning to millions, in fact 600 million, which will still be growing, Africans. And as you know, it is an important thing for language to be expressed properly. The utilization of visual language is very important, as we also have to start investigating how large language models can be trained to effectively understand these visual languages and also teach these visual languages to the game players. Furthermore, we need to understand that how these languages are utilized and how can we ensure that the large language model in the video game is emotionally aware of the various aspects. There are certain signs that will show that there are certain signs humans will make, or certain comments the humans will make that will need requirements of a sign to respond. And the sign must be emotionally aware, or the large language model must be emotionally aware of how to react or how to represent or how to respond to the game player. These are one of the things we want to explore in the video game, whereby we want the video game, the large language model, which will be expressed to the NPC, to be emotionally aware of the certain comments or certain things like the game players express. A good example of this is that imagine if someone says ish. We want the NPC, which is being controlled, to respond when he hears the word ish as kiss. And these are the visual languages, the colloquialisms that are being used in South Africa. We want the NPC in the video game to be aware of these languages and be able to respond, also respond with the right signs to show that it can serve as a proper companion within the video game. And again, like I say in this is the beginning of something great, and we believe that working with Satila on this is the right step and is the future of this form of research, and is the future of protecting not just the languages but the visual cues utilized in South Africa. Um, The latest research that have spoken with respect to these issues can be seen as Randle 2024 and Labo et al. 2024, which have spoken on the importance of preservation of indigenous knowledge through technology. And when we say indigenous language, we don't only mean language again alone, we also mean the visual cues. How can they be protected and how can they be sustained and kept for future generations? And this is something that is being done by the Sadila, and how they are preserving language, and also how visual language or colloquialisms can play a role and how they can be preserved for future generations so that knowledge is passed through technology, or not just technology, entertaining technology, for future generations to be kept engaged and captivated with respect to this transformational process that is occurring. While we are aware that the low resource languages do not have enough content online, we do believe that with Sadila and the video games, we'll begin to create more of these language repositories regularly, and we'll keep updating them. We don't believe that this is a one-off project. We believe that this is a long-term project. I will keep on expanding the databases and keep on creating new knowledge, and especially new ways of expressing this new knowledge through video games for the consumption of South Africans. So the image we see here is the first implementation which we tried in our test room in one of our labs here. And you can see the man with the afro there is called Sifiso Dlamini. He's a professor here, and the other person there is the game player. This was the initial concept of how we started the development and where we were testing the discussion between Professor Sifiso Dlamini and the game player. And in here, we're just setting up the game, setting up the environment to see how we position the professor and the NPC. And you can see that we put in some AIs and we're just testing to see how it worked or how we utilized it in the game. So it's still a work in progress, and it's very, very exciting for us. In this image, you can see here we've improved the work with generative AI, and here you can see two artworks. But what is happening here is that the professor is explaining to the game player, who is the other person there, about the artwork, how the artwork looks like, who created it, which digital virtual gallery is it in, and how it was developed. The aim of this is that we intend to also speak to Vet University to see how we can put in the Origin Center as a digital library, whereby in the video game people can go in there and ask questions, do some things there, talk about some paintings, learn more about this creative work. And again, this doesn't take away the fact that people should go to museums or galleries. It is just a tool to express to people what they would meet when they go to those museums. And again, the uniqueness of this is that we intend to provide this in the indigenous language of the game player, to provide them more knowledge about this and express it to them in their local language so that they are aware of the content of this. With all this said, we need to be aware that video games are tools to bridge the knowledge gap. We believe that in the future, or even now, video games can transfer learning for both players, for both educators, and also enhance learning outcomes. We believe that the future of learning is an engaging, entertaining, and fun experience for learners. And we believe that video games have the ability to harness and engage in an interactive manner to educators and also to students in an effective and immersive manner. And we believe that video games can provide this knowledge not just in English, but in the indigenous language of the students at the students' location of convenience. And we believe that not just that this would only be for video games, we believe that this will be the future of learning, whereby learning will be taking place in the digital space through the utilization of NPCs as classmates in the classroom and also through video games. Through immersive video game experiences, cultural beliefs, cultural values, and even the spirit of Ubuntu will be expressed in a sociocultural manner to game players, especially showing the Ubuntu nature of South Africa and how we work as South Africans work as a team will be expressed in the video games. Furthermore, the video games will serve as a tool to provide literacy awareness, literacy issues, and cultural awareness to video game players, especially with respect to what to do, what not to do, how to greet in certain cultures, how not to greet, what customs are valid in which cultures, what customs are not accepted in another culture. Video games play a role to provide awareness and also to be a place whereby knowledge is shared, and knowledge is shared to a various and wide group of people in respective of where they are based. Raises the question of learning process, and video games intend to provide the role of not just learning but a knowledge retention environment in an engaging way to learners. For us to start this wonderful journey, we would be utilizing I'm working with Sadila, especially since they have a repository of South African indigenous languages, and we'll be using that to build our data set and improve on it, and also use it via our NPCs to provide indigenous knowledge or indigenous conversations to the game with the game player. We believe that the time to prepare for the future is now, and we believe that the utilization of video games through large language models and NPCs is the preparation of the school or the university of the future. And we believe that this can start now, and we believe that this is the right time to start this form of research, which is innovative, groundbreaking, and we believe that with Sadila, we'll be able to push this digital humanities or this new digital humanities form of knowledge protection, knowledge repository in time.